Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at the ground vehicle planned battle rating changes for July of 2021. Now, it's not a surprise to see a bunch of battle rating changes because of the fact that the max BR was put up to 11.0. A lot of these are around the 9.0 to 11.0 area, so it's gonna take a while to get through them, but I definitely think it'll be worth it. The first one is the SARC Mark 6 2-pounder. This machine was added in obviously in Ixvat Strike for the South Africans and in the British tree. Seeing it go down is not too much of a surprise. The machine itself is quite large, has pretty much no armor, and only has a 2-pounder, so its penetration on the gun isn't too bad, but the post-pen damage can be a little bit rough. I'm a little bit worried about putting the SARC down in BR though, because as you go lower, when you get into that 1.3 to 2.3 bracket, there's a lot of vehicles with auto cannons, and the Mark 6 2-pounder will just get chewed up by them. But then again, its 2-pounder will be a little bit more useful now. As long as it stays at rank 2, it'll still have scouting, so it'll still have that in its repertoire if it struggles to go after anything. So overall, I think it's fine. You know, maybe it finds a nice little place at that BR. Then we have the M3A3s. So the Italian, the Chinese, and the French M3A3s are all going up to 2.7. This makes me incredibly sad, but also it makes sense. I'm not going to lie. The M3A3s are my go-to vehicles when it comes to getting first places or trying to get first places with nations for decals and stuff like that. Them and also the M5s. They are very strong. They have great reloads, stabilized guns, they have good mobility, they have scouting, they have pretty much everything you would want from a vehicle. The only vehicles they struggle against is stuff like B1 TERS and also M4105s from the American point of view, but everything else is really great. They're really fun to use. I would highly recommend them if you haven't tried the M3A3 or the M5s. They're very, very good. The STRV M42EH is going down from 3.0 to 2.7, and the reason for this is probably because of the gun that this machine has. The gun is not great. It hasn't got the best reload, and also at the same time, it doesn't have the most pen, which is probably the biggest issue with the vehicle itself, with the 75mm. And my guess is that's why it's not really going through. You know, it has the APHE that only pens 63, the APC-BC only pens 85 at best, and that's not great when it comes to dealing with a lot of stuff. A lot of the lower-tier Swedish vehicles actually get bailed out, and the reason for this is because they get APDS. Well, the M42EH doesn't, so it only has APBC. That's probably why it struggles a little bit and is going down in BR. The armor on it also isn't great. The mobility is very average. It's just a very average vehicle. Hopefully now it'll mean it can have a lineup around it, which is a little bit more useful for the machine, running it with the Largo 1, which relies a lot on its APDS, and also the LVT, which is a tank destroyer disguised as an AA. Then the M5s, so the M5A1 for the Americans and also the Chinese. Both of these are going up to 2.7 from 2.3, following the line of the M3A3s. Not a surprise at all. One thing that they have missed out here, though, which does need to be addressed, there is a premium version of the M5 as well for the Americans, the 5th Armored Division. Hopefully that gets added in, otherwise we're going to have a scenario where, the premium version will be better than the standard one. There is also the Twitch drop version of the M5A1, which was given out a while ago. So yeah, that's also another thing about the M5. So you can actually run a 3-stacked M5 lineup for America if you have all the vehicles. Insanely good. And once again, as I said, my go-to when it comes to trying to get these challenges done, such as the decals. Now you'll be able to run it with stuff, I believe, like the P40, which would be nice. The P40 in general is a pretty good vehicle with its 50 cals from the top and also access to bombs. So I don't think it will lose too much of its power in ground realistic. I think it will still be fine and it will work well. And I'm looking forward to using it going forward and trying it out at the new BR. The Ratel 90 is going down from 6.7 to 6.3. This does not surprise me. A lot of people look at stuff like the Ratel 90 and go, oh, well, it has heat FS. It must be really good. You know, it must be, you know, it can pen my heavy tanks through the front. This is unfair. This is not fair. This is a post-World War II vehicle. Why is it facing my World War II heavy tanks? And the reason is because all it has is that heat FS round. Everything else about it is bog standard or weaker than general. The Ratels do not have powerful engines, right? The Ratel 90 is 20 tons with a 500 horsepower engine, and it's a wheeled vehicle, so on certain terrain in game, it really struggles to be moving around, which is a big problem with it. At the same time, it also gets access to a really long reload for that 90mm, and it has good gun depression, but it's also huge, so it's really easy to shoot, really easy to see, and also, guess what? Against planes, it can be 50 cal'd to death, because it has that less armor. Playing stuff like the Ratel 90 and the Ratel 20 are incredibly hard to play compared to something like a World War II heavy tank, where you can use your armor and you can use your ability to be able to find yourself in areas of the map and like control those positions. In the Ratel 90 you can't do that because anything can kill you, and whereas in, let's say, a heavy tank, sometimes you have the advantage against other light tanks, or, you know, against AAs and stuff like that. The Ratel 90 can't go after, let's say, an Ostwind. It just can't happen. You will just die. It's one of those very odd and weird scenarios. The thing about moving it to 6.3, though, is I don't think Britain really has a 6.3 lineup. They have a 6.01, but the 6.01's a little bit rough. I suppose they have the Charioteer at 6.3, so you can run it with that. Have, like, the Charioteer moving in with it. Maybe that's what you do. But I think overall, it's nice to see it go down. Hopefully the Ratel 20 follows suit as well, because of the fact that you're just huge, no mobility, and no armor. You are so reliant on your weaponry in the first 5 minutes of the game, and after that first 5 minutes, you just get killed by a plane anyway. So it just is how it is. The next one's the Dardo. The Dardo is going up to 9.3. No surprise here. APF SDS, fully stabilized. The armor on the front of it, the upper glacis, bounces a lot of stuff. It has like this weird area in the center of the upper glacis where basically the driver sits, where the angle of the armor is very high. So what ends up happening is APF SDS ricochets off that. If you shoot it in the lower glacis, then the round will hit the transmission and nothing else. If you shoot it in the turret, that is the kill shot on the machine. Has access to TOW2Bs, scouting, mobility. It has pretty much anything you would ever want when it comes to a vehicle. It is also interesting to see this and also the M3A3 go up, because I see them as very comparable with the amount of, with the power level of both of them. So it's nice to see them going up together, but it does also beg the question, with these things going up, maybe stuff such as some of the 8.0 things need to be revisited and had a look at. The HSTVL is going from 9.7 to 10.3, and the major reason why this is happening is because the operation of the loading mechanism has been corrected. Now, I think what this means is it will no longer have the autoloader that it has, where it only can fire a certain set of rounds. I think they're going to increase it so it can either fire a lot more rounds in one setup, or it'll be able to fire everything in one setup, meaning that the HSTVL, the killing power of it, is going to increase. I've been playing the HSTVL a bit recently, and even without the loading mechanism change, I think it would have gone up in BR. And the reason I say this is because of the fact that one of the changes things that has made it incredibly powerful compared to a bunch of other vehicles is it has that highly sloped front area, and with the new mechanics that they've added recently, which is the control of the gun from either the commander or the gunner position, you can go hold down in this thing and not die, because it doesn't get hull broken by APFSDS. Everybody's firing APFSDS, and the ammo is in the base of the machine, and the gunner and the driver are also in the base. So this thing is highly survivable, ridiculously survivable, one of the most survivable vehicles of the light tanks in the game, and that I don't think is going to change unless people figure that they need to use CAS against it, or people start bringing heat. So I think even without this change to the ammunition, it still would have been going up in BR. It's a very strong vehicle. I highly recommend giving it a go. The 2A5 is staying at the same BR, but it is getting a new shell alongside the Leopard 2PL as well. So the 2A5 is staying at 11.0, the 2PL is going up to 10.7. This is not a surprise to me. With 11.0 being added in, I thought a bunch of 10.7s would go up to, 10.3s would go to 10.7, some 11.0s will get moved down. You know how it is when they always add in new BRs. So the 2PL is going back up to 10.7, so it's slightly worse than the 2A5, 2A6, that's fine. They're adding the DM43 to both the 2A5 and the 2PL. So they're giving some stronger rounds once again to these high echelon vehicles. This is not how you solve the problems of balance, right? We need to learn how to remove shells instead of just adding more shells to these vehicles. The Russian vehicles, the Soviet vehicles, now have better shells. The 2A5 and 2PL now have better shells. This is literally called power creep. This is how, this is how this goes. The armor values of vehicles since the 2A6 has been added hasn't really improved. A lot of people are going to look at the T-80 BVM. It still has the same weak spots as all the other damn Russian tanks. You shoot them all in the same place. If by the point you run into the T-64A and the T-72A, you should know from there and on where to shoot these vehicles, right? We need to stop adding better rounds to these vehicles. That is not how we do this. We have to at least try and push forward the idea that people need to aim instead of trying their best to just fire at a target and hopefully their round is good enough to penetrate them anywhere. This just hurts vehicles which are around that 10.0, 10.3 area, which don't have as much armor as the 11.0s, and they're just going to get blasted. What's also interesting with the 2A5 and 2PL is the fact that they're getting the DM43, but the STRVs, the 122s, miss out. That is a bit of an oddity. A lot of the changes that have been made to the 2A5s, or the Leopards in general, have also been co-signed with the STRV 122s, but that doesn't seem to be the case this time, which is at least interesting to see. The SU122P is going down to 5.7. Not a surprise here. Tank destroyers in general are useless in the game. There is no real reason to use them over their medium tank, heavy tank, and light tank counterparts. I've said this for an incredibly long time. They have to find some reason for people to use light, medium, and heavy tanks. And if they can't find a reason for people to use them, then they're just going to keep going down in BR because they are worse than their medium tank counterparts. The 122P also suffers from an issue that was caused by updating new power, an issue which is completely fine in my opinion. It's something that was always going to happen once you added in volumetric shells. The 122P fires a large shell, right? And before updates new power, what used to happen with volumetric shells, or just shells in general, is they would have a pixel thick area where they would penetrate. So wherever that area on the shell hit the target, that's where the shell went through. Now the shells are modeled as their size. The larger caliber machines with the larger shells, you're going to have to be way more precise with where you're shooting these things. So something like the 122P, which has terrible gun depression, terrible reload, that issue with the shell as well, and also is a casemate, really ain't a surprise to see it go down. It's also 6,000 GE, which is another problem with it, because guess what's also 6,000 GE? The T-34-100, the T-44-122 as well, which are both just better vehicles than the 122P, but at least now with it, it will be a lower BR, and therefore a reason. I would actually lower the GE of this thing. I think it's a bit too high for what you get out of it. Carrying on the trend of the 122P, the SU-85 is going down in BR, the SU-100 is going down in BR, and the Chinese one is as well. As I said, there is a reason why these things keep going down, and it's because they're casemates. They don't have turrets. It's harder to use them. I've spaded all of these things, and they are so much harder to play than their medium tank counterparts. So to see them go down is positive, because it means now they have an advantage compared to the mediums that were there already. The SU-100 is at the same BR as the T-44. The T-44 has the 85mm, fires pretty quickly, has pretty decent armor, and has a turret. It's actually a very fun vehicle to use. The SU-100 has the nice gun, but once again, longer reload, worse gun depression, no armor, and also is a casemate. Do you see why these things keep going down in BR? They're harder to play than their medium tank counterparts. So I'm happy they're going down. Hopefully it means that more people can enjoy using them, because they are fun vehicles, but you need to use them very specifically in the way that they, play. The ASU-85, it's a 5-minuter, and what I mean by a 5-minuter is you spawn at the start of the game, you find a good position, you scout with it, you kill a few things, and then a plane kills you after 5 minutes. Because you have no armor, so you just get 50 cal to death. So, once again, to see it go down in BR, not a surprise, I'm fine with it. Jagdpanzer 4.5 is also going down in BR. I've said for many years, that thing is not a good vehicle, doesn't work well at all. It's very easy to counter with pretty much anything. They still need to remove its APCR though. Its APCR as a stock round really hinders the vehicle, and I would say probably makes a lot of people look over it as a vehicle. I personally, it was one of the toughest grinds that I did in the game when it come to ground vehicles, just because of that APCR stock, which doesn't really do a lot. Maybe you give this machine scouting to make it a little bit more useful, but seeing it go down is not a surprise for the same reasons that I brought it previously with the other ones. Then you got the Dicamax and the Stur Meal. The Dicamax is going down to 3.7, the Stur Meal is going down to 4.3. Once again, not a surprise with these vehicles. Long reload, open-topped, killed by planes, and they made planes a lot easier to get into with the SP changes, and also the fact that a lot of other vehicles were changed from tank destroyers to light tanks, e.g. the Hellcats, so now it's much easier to get into planes. And what a surprise, all the casemates, which are terrible against planes, are now going to be put down in BR. Not too much of a surprise. Don't think it'll make too much of a difference to the Stur Meal. Stur Meal has other issues with it. Very slow, way too long reload. But the Dicamax is a lot of fun. I've enjoyed that one every time I played it. I would recommend it. Give it a go. It is a pretty nice vehicle in general. And I would actually swap the BRs of the Dicamax and the Stur Meal personally. I would put the Stur Meal at 3.7 and the Dicker at 4.3. I think the Dicker is actually, or maybe 4.0. I think the Dicker is actually pretty nice to play. But now the Dicker is actually lower BR than the 88mm. I'm wondering if they're going to swap those two machines. We're going to have to see going forward. It does mean that now it also runs with the Panzer IV G, which is really nice. The Panzer IV-G is a very, very strong vehicle. The 75 works very well with the turret, so we'll have to see how it does. The Type 90s are getting moved down to 10.7. This is kind of a surprise for me. They're getting moved down from 11.0. The Type 90s got moved up because they buffed the reload. It's now at 4 seconds, where before it was 5. I feel like if you're going to kill somebody in 5 seconds, you're probably going to kill them in 4 before. But now with the commander-gunner change, where the commander can take over the gun, now it makes a lot more sense that the Type 90s would go down in BR. The JM33 is a pretty strong shell, but when you think about the amounts of shells that have been added to other vehicles, such as the Soviet vehicles, such as the German vehicles, such as the British and the American vehicles, it is not a surprise that the JM33 is not looking as good as a bunch of the other ones, but it still gets the job done. The Type 90 was one of my favorite spades that I did at high ranks, has good mobility, good reload, good gun, good everything. The thing that would help it a lot, though, is if they actually gave it a rank 1 APFS DS, if it's able to do so, just to ease the pain of it a little bit when using that stock heat. But seeing them go down, not too much of a surprise, but at the same time, they're still very powerful vehicles, so I could see them going up once again. The Ariete and the Ariete PSOs, this is interesting. Both of the vehicles are getting swapped in position, and also their BRs are getting kind of swapped. So the Ariete is going from 10.3 to 11.0, and the Ariete PSO is going from 11.0 to 10.7. Now, the Arietes have always been decently mobile, no armor, but very good round machines. That's pretty much what they are. They have horrible ammo racks, meaning that a lot of vehicles at this level, they've gone to the blowout panel idea, so the ammo is stored in the back, where when you look at the Ariete, that is just not the case. They store it in the center of the machine. And what this means is if you get shot through the hull at all, you just die. It's as simple as that, because of where the ammo is stored in the first stage ammo stowage. The PSO doesn't really add anything to the Ariete apart from just extra weight, because the armor is still not good enough to be able to stop any of the rounds which are coming in. So not a surprise to see that thing actually go down in BR. I always thought the standard Ariete was better than the PSO, and this actually means that there is now a reason to spade the PSO compared to the Ariete. Now that they're going to be switched, the PSO will have a lot lower modification costs than the Ariete, so it might be a bit more fun to play. At 10.7, I think it's fine. I would have probably put the normal Ariete up to 10.7, but swap them still. And or what I would do is Ariete 10.7, Ariete PSO 10.3. I don't think the standard Ariete should be at 11.0. When I compare it to the other 11.0 vehicles, I don't think it's as strong, even though it does have a lot of the nice factors like the Gen 2 thermals, the really good round. It also has a few downsides, like, as I said, the armor, the mobility is not the best, and also the reload's not the best, and the ammo placement on top of that. The Challenger 2 is going up to 10.7 from 10.3. They're also adding the L27A1 shell to it, so a better shell once again. So this is to obviously try and balance it a little bit. The Challenger 2 I need to play. I haven't played at all, so unfortunately I can't really give a lot of ideas on it. I will be spreading it in the future, so we'll have to see how it is. The CV90-120 and Centauro 120, both of these going up to 10.7. That's completely fine. Both of these are highly mobile vehicles. They have scouts. They are scouts, so therefore they have, a secondary thing that they can do. They're also things that you run in pretty strong lineups already, and with the Arietes moving around, the 120 will still be able to play with the PSO and do well with it. The only issue with these vehicles is they're end-of-the-line vehicles, so they take ages to research mods on them. And at least, you know, you have a rank 1 APFS DS on the 120 Centauro, which is very, very powerful, the DM33. And when it comes to the CV90, you know, you have the DM23 there as well. So overall, I'm fine with these vehicles going up. They're really good when they're spaded. They have a lot of good factors to them. Not a surprise to see that at all. Then the Bradley, as we talked about, is going up in BR. Not a surprise. It's an insane vehicle. The M48 Super is going down in BR. The Super is a vehicle that always gets overlooked because it's a fat M48. But it does actually have a lot of really nice factors to it. The major issue with it is it's an end-of-the-line vehicle, and when you say to someone, hey, do you want to play the Leopard 2 or do you want to play the M48? They're obviously going to pick the Leopard 2. So you end up in this scenario with it where there's not really much point in playing it. When you can just blast past it and the lineup it has around it. You know, you had the Radkamp wagons, so you're always going to play that first. The KPZ-70 as a backup. It's always like a tertiary vehicle to those, so it probably doesn't get to see a lot of play. At 9.0 though, it will get to see a lot of play. So you'll run it with the 1A5 and have a good time with it. It's nice to see the change. I'm not sure I agree with it though, because in a fully spaded sense, when it has the DM33 and has everything else, the Super is incredibly strong. So we'll have to see as it goes forward as a vehicle. The Brennus is going from 8.7 to 8.3. This will be based solely on the fact it has not got a stabilizer. I think the Brennus is pretty good. I've always done pretty well in it. It has everything you would ever want apart from a stabilizer. It has the APFS DS, it has thermals, it has the laser rangefinder, it has the ERA with the jammer thing as well, and also it has the 20mm. The B2 is also very good. If you haven't played these, I highly recommend it. I disagree with the Brennus going down. I think it's a good enough vehicle to not go down. But it does mean that now at least I can spade the Acura with it and I suppose have a good time. But it's always confusing to me. It really is confusing to me that people don't do better in these vehicles. I know a stabilizer is like you get used to it and stuff, but you can play around, you know, it without it. It's as simple as that. Then we have the Ariete P, the Challenger Mark 3 and the Vickers Mark 7. All of these are moving from 9.7 to 10.0. This is not a surprise. This is what happens when you move up the higher BR to from 10.7 to 11.0. All the things that were performing really well at 9.7 get bumped up. So these are the three that were obviously performing really well at 9.7. The Challenger Mark 3 is part of a lineup that I've really enjoyed alongside the Vickers. You know, the Mark 2, Mark 3 and Vickers has been very fun to play with the lineup. So to see them go up to 10.0, not a surprise at all. I think they'll be fine at 10.0. They'll work okay. You know, the Challengers have insanely good reload and also good gun depression, thermals, and also hull down capabilities. I think it'll be fine. The Vickers is just a more mobile version and should be fine as well. Just harder to play because of the fact that it has that it has the end-of-the-line modification costs, which I hope at some point they actually get rid of. Now, it does mean that maybe people can give the Oliphant a go, or the TTD, and give them a little bit of a show to see how they are. The T-64A is going from 9.3 to 9.0. This is a ridiculous change. One of the things to understand about the T-64A is, yes, it is weaker than the T-72A, which is at the same BR of 9.3. But at the same time, the T-64A facing stuff which are 8.0s is insanity. There are plenty of 8.0s which will just get eaten by the T-64A, and the lineup of the T-72A and the T-64A plus something like maybe the Chrysanthema or even the ZSU-37-2 or a light vehicle like the BMP-2M is an incredibly strong lineup. It's one of the ones I had a great time with moving forward, and this really, to me, it looks like the T-62M situation once again, where they're just throwing down a vehicle that isn't doing as well as its compatriots and it's going to stomp. The T-62M right now is an incredibly good vehicle at 8.7, ridiculously good. Right? And the T-64A is going to be incredibly good at 9.0 as well. Even though it still gets sliced up by DM33, it's still going to be nice. It's still going to be a really nice vehicle. Then, the Leopard 2K moving down to 9.3. The world has lost its mind. I understand the 2K has DM13. Okay, I get that. I understand that DM13 sometimes doesn't, pen as much as it needs to. What I mean by that is it penetrates a vehicle but doesn't do enough damage. But it is still a very strong vehicle, highly mobile. 20mm is great. If you know where to use the gun, or you know where to shoot vehicles, you can do insane amounts of damage to vehicles. And at the same time, with the 2K, the fact is it has a really strong lineup around it as well, that you can run with it. So for me, seeing this go down is a really bad decision. I don't want to see more of these things running around and annihilating everything. They are very strong vehicles. They don't need to be touched at all. The M1128 Striker is going up from 9.0 to 9.3. Not a surprise. Scouting, M900, the change to survivability with the overpressure stuff instead of the hull brake stuff. It's made it a lot better vehicle than it was before. It's a very nice tank destroyer with access to scouting. And for me, to see it go up in BR, not a surprise. The Centauro 105 going from 8.0 to 8.3. I think I can understand this, The only thing it really lacks is APF SDS, but now it's kind of weird to see the PTL02 stay at 8.3 if the Centauro is going up. I think this is a change which makes the most sense because the Centauro is a very powerful vehicle, has great mobility, rangefinder and all of that stuff. Like the two big changes they made last update, which are going to preempt a lot of these changes, are the commander view thing, where the commander can now take over the guns, and also the laser rangefinder change. You can see a lot of the vehicles here that are getting changed in BR and generally going up have both of those factors in their favor, and it's not a surprise to see them go up, right? Then we have the AMX 1390. That's going from 7.0 to 7.3. This is a surprise to me. The 1390 is a good vehicle. It's fun to use. It has a really good gun on it, but it's incredibly unstable and wobbly. So getting it on target's a little bit hard, and it's also heavy for an AMX 13. So I don't think it'll affect it too much. It'll still have really good lineups you can run it with. And also, its stock setup is really nice with the Heat FS, so I think it'll be fine, and you'll still be able to use it as a passive scout, and then just take shots when you need to with its really good reload. But to see it go up, yeah, it does surprise me. T114 going up once again. It was at 6.7 not long ago. Somebody must be absolutely caning in that vehicle. I don't understand it going up. It's got no survivability. It's very small, so I suppose it's hard to see, but it should get annihilated by planes. Just like the Oosh as well. The Oosh is going up alongside the T114. Don't understand these changes. I would have to have a think about it more. It must just be that people are really struggling with map awareness right now, and they're just wandering past these little vehicles and getting annihilated by them. That's the only thing I can think of. Because the AMX 13 is also going up to 6.7, which makes absolutely no sense to me. The AMX 13, even at 6.3, made no sense. At 6.0, where it was before, with the 75mm, it made a little bit of sense. But this thing at 6.7, it's got good pen on the gun, decent reload, but everything else about it is wonky for a 6.7. when you compare it to, let's say, the RU251, you take the RU251 every time over it. Same with stuff like the T-92 and the Scorpion and also the Ontos. So for me, I disagree with this change. I don't think it is a 6.7. You're going to have to use it as a really defensive scout now, but that's okay, I suppose. Then we have the Panther G. It's going down to 5.7 from 6.0. Makes sense, since the other Panther is at that BR. The Panther F is going from 5.7 to 6.0, so they're just moving those around to see which one works and where, which one has better statistics than the other one. That's fine. The Panzer III F is going from 1.7 to 1.3. This is also completely fine, because the turret rotation on that machine is terrible, meaning that you get shots on that flat part a lot first before you can get the shot off. Then the ZSU-37-2. This machine is going from 8.3 to 8.0. I think that's fine. It's very similar to the capabilities of the Shilka, has the same radar, or at least very similar radar. The only slight difference is the guns, and the guns themselves, they're better at different things. The Shilka is better at just firing out a wave of annihilation, which works really well in certain areas. And the 37 is much more precise and better for attacking longer range targets. So these two are comparable vehicles and should be at the same BR, and it's nice to see that actually happen. The AMX-13 FL11 is going up to 3.7 from 3.3. The AMX-13s must be doing insanely well right now. That's 3 of them that are going up in BR. I don't think the FL11 needs to go up in BR. I don't think the standard one goes up in BR. I can understand the 1390, but not the other 2. And then the Tunguska is going from 10.3 to 10.7. I think, once again, this is a change based off the fact that the max BR went up to 11.0. I think it's fine that it's going to 10.7. It's a very good AA, annihilates anything that it needs to, and it's pretty fun to play as well. So I think that's fine. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would have a look at some of the other AAs, maybe pushing up their BRs as well, but a lot of them, the missile AAs, are already at 10.7 anyway, so not too much of a surprise. So a lot of top tier changes here, a lot of things that I agree with, some things that I disagree with, but a lot of it just seems to be the basic balancing of now, you know, we now have 11.0. The Brennus going down, I disagree with. The MX-13s going up, I disagree with. The T-64A going down, I disagree with. But everything else, I can understand and it makes sense. I did miss a vehicle, which is the IKV-91 going from 6.7 to 7.0. This one makes sense because of the laser rangefinder change. It's made the vehicle a lot more easy to use, and it was always a 7.0 vehicle anyway, so now being put up to 7.0, it's nice to see. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.